The Enchanted River Quest.
The sound of rushing water filled the air, but there was no river in sight. A faint blue glow shimmered through the dense fog ahead, casting eerie shadows on the ancient trees. Aria tightened her grip on the weathered map in her hands, her heart pounding with anticipation. "This is it," she whispered to herself. The river of legend. For centuries, the Enchanted River was thought to be a myth, an ethereal waterway that appeared only once every 100 years, promising its seeker unimaginable power. Some claimed it granted eternal life. Others spoke of a curse that swallowed entire expeditions. Whatever the truth, no one had ever returned to tell the tale. Aria's boots crunched softly against the damp forest floor as she ventured further. The trees grew denser, their twisted branches clawing at the sky, and the faint blue glow pulsed like a heartbeat. She knew the stakes. Her family's name, her future, and the lives of those she loved depended on her success. Failure wasn't an option. A low growl broke her thoughts. She froze. From the shadows, golden eyes glinted in the fog. Slowly, a pack of wolves emerged, their movements deliberate and unnervingly silent. Their fur seemed to shimmer unnaturally, as if absorbing the faint blue light from the unseen river. These weren't ordinary wolves. "Stay calm," Aria muttered under her breath, reaching for the dagger strapped to her thigh. She didn't want to use it, not yet. The lead wolf let out a guttural snarl, stepping closer. Its claws scraped against the rocks with an unsettling sharpness. Aria's instincts screamed at her to run, but she knew better. Turning her back would mean certain death. Suddenly, a sharp whistle sliced through the air. The wolves stopped in their tracks, their ears perking up. "Looks like you found the welcoming party." Aria whipped around to see a man stepping out of the mist. He was tall, his face obscured by a hood, and he carried a staff engraved with glowing runes. The wolves growled softly but didn't attack, as if restrained by some unseen force. "Who are you?" Aria demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Someone who knows you're in way over your head," the stranger replied. "The river doesn't welcome just anyone, you know, and it doesn't like intruders." The wolves began to circle her again, their golden eyes flicking between Aria and the hooded man. "If you want to survive," he said, stepping closer, "you're going to need my help. The Enchanted River is no place for the unprepared." "I don't trust you," Aria said, her dagger still poised. "You don't have to," the man said with a smirk. "But you'll trust them even less." He gestured to the wolves. Suddenly, the ground beneath them rumbled. The wolves scattered, vanishing into the fog, and the faint blue glow grew brighter. A chilling voice echoed through the air, as if the river itself had come alive. "Only the worthy may drink from my waters. Prove yourself, or be forgotten." The hooded man turned to Aria, his tone deadly serious now. "Your quest has just begun." Chapter 1: The Map's Secrets. Hours earlier, Aria had been sitting in a dusty library, poring over ancient texts and fragmented maps. Her mentor, a grizzled historian named Elias, had warned her about the dangers of chasing myths. "This river you're so obsessed with? It's more than just a fairy tale," he had said, leaning heavily on his cane. "It's a trap. Every story, every map, it all leads to the same place, nowhere. And those who go looking for it, they don't come back." But Aria wasn't deterred. She had grown up on tales of the river, passed down through her family. Her great-grandmother had been one of the last to claim she'd seen it, though no one had believed her. The map Aria now clutched was a family heirloom, its edges worn and its symbols cryptic. "You'll need more than just courage," Elias had muttered as she left the library. "You'll need luck, and maybe something more." Chapter 2: The Stranger's Bargain. The hooded man introduced himself as Kael, though he gave little else away. His rune staff seemed to glow brighter the closer they got to the river's glow. Despite her initial reluctance, Aria agreed to let him guide her, for now. The wolves' sudden retreat hadn't been a coincidence, and Kael seemed to know more about the river than he let on. "The river doesn't just test your strength," Kael said as they walked. "It tests your mind, your heart, and your soul. Fail any one of those tests, and it'll destroy you." Aria remained silent, her eyes scanning the misty forest for signs of danger. The air grew colder, and the trees seemed to close in around them. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Kael suddenly stopped, holding up a hand. "Do you hear that?" he asked. At first, Aria heard nothing. Then, faintly, the sound of a melody reached her ears. It was hauntingly beautiful, like a lullaby carried on the wind. But there was something wrong about it, something that made her skin crawl. "Don't listen," Kael warned, gripping his staff tighter. "Cover your ears if you have to. That's the river's song." "What happens if I don't?" Aria asked, already pressing her palms against her ears. Kael's jaw tightened. You'll find out why no one ever comes back. Chapter 3, The First Trial. The song faded as they pressed on, but the tension in the air didn't. They reached a clearing where the blue glow was strongest. At the center stood a massive stone archway, its surface carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when looked at directly. The gateway, Kael said. The river lies beyond it. But first, before he could finish, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The archway's carvings lit up, and a voice boomed from the stones. Who seeks the waters of the Enchanted River? Aria stepped forward, her voice steady. I do. The voice laughed, a sound like cracking ice. Then prove your worth, seeker. Face the trials, or be consumed by the river's wrath. The forest around them seemed to dissolve, replaced by a vast, desolate landscape. Storm clouds roared overhead, and the wind howled with a fury that nearly knocked Aria off her feet. What is this? She shouted to Kael. Your first trial, he said grimly. Survive and we'll talk. Chapter 4, The Trial of Shadows. Aria stood alone in the desolate landscape, her pulse racing. Kael had disappeared, leaving only the echo of his last words. The wind whipped at her hair, and shadows began to stir in the distance. They moved unnaturally, slithering and twisting like living things. A deep voice resonated through the storm. To prove your worth, you must face what lies within. Your fears, your regrets, your failures, they will rise against you. Aria gritted her teeth. She had come too far to falter now. Drawing her dagger, she stepped forward, ready to face whatever the river's test would throw at her. The shadows coalesced into a massive figure, its eyes glowing red.